Lately, I've seen a lot of hate towards CS2, which could be considered justified if it wasn't mostly a comparison between CS2 and CSGO. Now, before we get into this topic, I want to clarify a few things. First, I'm not a CS2 fanboy. I'm just trying to research and compare hate arguments fair and square. I do acknowledge that CS2 has a lot of bugs and unpleasant things tied to the game, but this video will cover mostly things the CS community has said about the game when compared to CSGO. Second, I've played much more CSGO than I did with CS2. I've only started to play the updated version recently, and as of recording I only have around 350 hours in the game, but that's just enough to compare the games in my opinion. Third, I'm not a professional player. I'm going to do a comparison of this game from the perspective of a regular player who hasn't adjusted his game sense to the max. So today I'll try to debunk and sort out some of the things community has said about the game. Here's a list of things that CS players have been fussing the most about. Optimization, subtext system, movement, overall game and level design. Lack of updates, removed content from CSGO. Okay, so let's start with optimization. A lot of people complain about CS2 optimization and how it's nearly absent in comparison to CSGO. Most people say that they experience consistent stutters on their mid-end PCs on high or even mid settings. To sort this statement out, let's first look at the requirement settings for CS2. As you can see, the game requires 4-thread processor, 8GB of RAM, and 1GB GPU with the support of DirectX 11. Doesn't seem so requiring, right? But the community can't just blatantly exaggerate or even lie about the game's performance on their PC is just not possible. So, to test if players are right, I'm going to take my low-end PC for a test of this game. I bought this PC a few years ago for a price of $300 brand new, that is built from Chinese manufactured parts, which as we know aren't so well performing when it comes to long-term gaming. My computer specs are on the screen, so let's run CS2 in high settings with hopes that my PC won't explode and kill me. That can be. My PC is running CS2 just fine without any stutters. Wow. Turns out that the game's optimization isn't as bad as you guys make it seem. I guess the arguments regarding game optimization comes from CSGO, because the original game was built on Source Engine, which is almost 21 years old now, and even my old potato PC with 2GB of RAM could run it on low without any lags. But you guys gotta remember that it's a year of 2025 now, and to keep up with today's standards, Valve needed to upgrade the graphics to be somewhat pleasing compared to other games, and if we compare the game's optimization with other games with similar graphics, we can actually see that CS2 runs better than most of them. Okay, so we figure out what's wrong with optimization, so let's get into the most interesting argument everyone brings over when talking how bad CS2 is. Substick system and registration. So what's this mysterious subtick everyone's blaming their devs in matchmaking for, and how bad is it actually compared to CSGO 64 tick and Faceit 128 tick servers? I've obtained PhD in computer education, spent my last few years learning the science behind that, given birth to 2 kids, outlived them, and now I'm finally ready to tell you about tickrates. I've just watched a few videos on YouTube. I could have not figured out what tickrate actually is and the difference between all those numbers without amazing VNSC videos regarding this topic. I'm going to quote him a few times and use his footage, so you better go under the description and check his videos out. So basically, tickrate is the refreshment rate of the server. Each tick, the client receives your data and sends it to a server you're playing on. Essentially, it is true that the higher the tick rate, the better registration you'll receive, but there is more to that. You see, 64 tick rate in CSGO didn't actually input the data between those ticks, but rather output them at the tick. To put it simply, if you shoot at a wall and instantly flick your mouse, the game would actually register a shot at where you're aiming during the tick. It isn't as bad when it comes to regular play, but this is a competitive game we're talking about. where even milliseconds matter when there are millions of dollars on the line. There may be an instance where you shot someone a millisecond before someone shot you, but you will get yourself killed because your opponent's shot was actually closer to the tick. While subtick registers your input even before the tick and outputs your data at the moment of the next tick in order. On paper, it works better than regular tick, but you should realize that situation I've described works only under conditions that all players in the match have same low ping or playing on a LAN server. But what about 128 tick rate? Why don't Valve implement that onto their servers? Answer's easy: optimization. As you would need a better processor to process and register your input data with higher refreshment rate. And as we figured out earlier, most CS players can't even run the game on mid without any stutters. Now let's get into the most interesting topic: movement. Before we start further, I want you to keep in mind that CS2 is built on Source 2, which despite the name is actually very differently coded to Source 1, in which CSGO was coded. I think when we're talking about movement, most of it is subjective, but there are a few elements that I want to discuss now. First and foremost, b-hopping. I've seen a lot of people cry over the absence of it, as it destroyed their skill of puny noobs. I personally support the removing of b-hop entirely from a competitive game, as it gave a lot of unfair advantages to the player who can bunny hop against someone who's not that skilled in gliding your ass out across the map with the speed of a redditor who just saw an underage cosplayer on the street. I get that it wasn't a regular instance to see someone on meth flying around the map in competitive, but when you did, you just knew you were burdened to lose to the game to someone who can't even hit. Like, I'm sorry for actually getting better at the aim and other core elements of the game rather than learning the interval at which you need to press the space button. Yeah, I'm a crybaby, know what? Fight me, motherfuckers! I've also heard that a lot of people feel like they're gliding under their eyes when walking, but I feel like the movement we've got now is actually much more suitable for the competitive play. But that particular statement is purely my opinion. Regarding overall game design, I agree that the game has become less serious looking than it was before, with agent skins looking like they're straight out of Marvel comics and their overall designs looking like they're here to a costume party with terrorists against special forces theme. But to be fair, that tendency started way before CS2 was released, and we actually received no new agents in CS2, so most of clowny characters' designs we've got now are actually left out from CSGO. Regarding level designs, opinions may differ, but objectively they're better with new lighting and details. Some people have said that lighting isn't realistic and makes the game look cartoony, but I believe those people never left out their room to actually check if what they're saying is true. There could be an argument that with maps becoming more detailed, you can get distracted by the details. But I think that's a dumb argument, as most of the things on maps are static and in no way could catch your attention if you haven't learned the map yet. Now, let's get to the most realist argument I've seen in a while regarding CS2 being a worse game compared to CSGO, and it's lack of updates. I'm too suffering from boredom and because there's nothing new and refreshing coming out in the game, while CSGO provided regular updates that gave us new maps, skins, and sometimes even new game modes. I can't really defend Valve in this situation because, as we know, Valve is a small indie company that's operated by 3 people with a salary of plain spaghetti and canned beef. But all jokes aside, I kinda get that Source 2 is harder to work with and new maps should meet the modern requirements, being very detailed and good looking. But that's just wrong, cause there are hundreds of cool workshop maps that could at least be rotated monthly, so the community doesn't die of routine B-rushing on Mirage. The fuss about left out game modes is just something I cannot comprehend with my enormous genius brain, because the game modes that were left out barely had any players on them. I recently had an argument about Flying Scoutsman and Demolition being the best game modes the game had, and now CS2 is just boring without them. But I ain't gonna say nothing about that. The only game mode I truly miss is Danger Zone. I too don't understand why Valve decided to just cut it out, as it had decent player base and innovative gameplay that could fix the boredom from playing Dust 2 all day for a while.